My father came here to this country, New York City, when he was 17 years old, from Barbados.
Oh, interesting.
And he met the lady who would become my mother, and married her. And then out of that sprung 3 children, I being the youngest, but we were all separated by a year apart. My mother actually heritage was from Barbados also, even though we as children didn't realize that until we were teenagers. Because she had no accent, no nothing, she was born here. And her side of the family, her parents had both demise, so we never got a chance to really know that, just saw pictures. Yeah, so we didn't know she was actually Asian, but we did know she was an extraordinary cook.
Okay.
And so was my grandmother, because my grandmother, her name was Alberta Edwards, and she used to be the head chef or cook at Farley Mansion in Barbados, which was the governor's mansion.
So they knew the traditional foods then?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Oh yeah. So we didn't realize what we were missing until my mother passed away, and then all of a sudden, we had to eat food from other places. It wasn't quite as good, so we took a lot for granted.
Yeah.
But anyway, after we came, my sister was an educator in New York City school system, a principal, and my brother was a commercial artist and a musician and recorded records on RCA and Brunswick Records. And my background is electrical engineering, and I was a network designer for AT&T and a number of other companies. And but I always had this eye for art. I was trained as an artist, like my brother, and I went to Brooklyn Museum Art School when I was like 9 or 10 years
Oh,
old.
nice.
Because they selected me because they said I had an eye for art. And, but then I moved on later with an interest in technology. And I went to some pretty important schools. I graduated at the top of my class in a number of them. And I went into the technology field, and I did quite well at that. And thus came the funds for me to start acquiring art. But I'm a workaholic by nature, and my interest in African art, going back to your initial question, came from my father, because he was the gas when it was time for his 3 kids to go to public school here, that there was no courses in African history. And he felt it was important that we knew exactly where we came from in our heritage.
Okay.
Because he learned that in Barbados. And so he took it upon himself to homeschool us, as I would call it, to teach us about Africa and the African empires and important people and contributions in history and science and architecture, writing that came directly from Africa. And that always inspired us. And we thought, and it definitely reinforced us. I tell people later, it sort of inoculated me from racism, because even though I ran into that in my early life, even in technology and everything, I always rose above it because I always knew who I was. I was always comfortable,
exactly.
you know. And
Exactly.
so I didn't need any convincing, but I always loved art, and I was always a museum browser.
Okay.
And but I decided later on, because I've collected a lot of things, I don't want to go into all that. So I have this sort of this collecting book. And, but in the end, I focused on African art because that was the thing that gave me the greatest satisfaction. And what I discovered, because I study everything, I just don't buy a piece just to buy it
Yeah.
and put it on a mantle, pedestal. I want to know everything about it,
Sure.
you know, and what's its significance. So what I discovered was that not only but we used to think, my discussions with my brother, we used to think my father embellished the African history a little bit, because he wanted his kids to feel, because in this environment that we grew up in New York City, I mean, even this neighborhood here, which is Bedford-Stuyvesant, is like a hotbed of African culture in Brooklyn, and in some cases in New York City. It was what we call the Red Line neighborhood. They didn't build anything in this community nor in Harlem. You know, you could even find a newly built bathroom. I mean, women in the city couldn't purchase homes or anything, and it was red line, so the banks wouldn't lend you any money.
Okay.
And but we loved growing up in these communities because it had certain redeeming values that are not here now, to be frank. You know, but in those days when we grew up, they were, and it was truly a community where everybody looked out and helped each other. So it was wonderful.
You grew up in Bed-Stuy?
I grew up in Bed-Stuy. That's why the museum is
Yes,
there.
yeah.
Because this is my gift back to Bed-Stuy.
Nice.
And you know, in that trip I took, I would say, what I discovered in the study of African artifacts, their art, I call them artifacts because these are things that were actually used by the people, and for multitude of purposes and reasons. What I discovered by studying them, that they were actually a portal, a window to our history, because they tell you stories and things about us that you can't find anyplace else. You know, and then I developed relationships with African families and African political figures and so on and so forth. And I started getting stories you don't even find in books from them.
Yes.
And I apply that to our database of knowledge for this museum, and I put voice to the artifacts. But what I discovered ultimately is not only what my father taught us was true, I discovered 1,000 things that my father didn't know, even though he was a studier himself. You know, that magnified the importance of the African contribution to the world, and man and womankind. And that's what started me on this journey. We're collecting one piece in 1971, you know, expanded to over 3,000 artifacts now. So this is less than 3% of the collection that you see here. And we're working on an expansion of this.
Yeah.
That was part of what I was involved in Manhattan this morning, at a very important meeting of important people. So, and then we're having a number of them are coming here tomorrow, because we did a video session that's gonna be
I
distributed.
told them a little bit about
Yeah, that's
why you
good.
were not here.
That's gonna be, in honor, it was in honor of a very important person who was at the beginning with us when we started this quest for the museum, and that started in early 2015, when I received our first gift from an African nation, thanks to this gentleman's efforts from Equatorial Guinea, the president of Equatorial Guinea and ambassador to the UN of Equatorial Guinea, plus also with the ambassador of Ethiopia and Sierra Leone. that we got a gift very early, 2015, of $100,000. No questions asked. They had enough faith in me and my vision.
Right.
The president just gave me the money and said, Eric, use this to help build your museum. And that's what put us on the road to being here. Since then, we received $1.5 million from the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. And we have a grant that we're holding right now that we haven't spent for over $5 million for Eric Adams to be a capital
Operation.
capital.
Capital.
And we're working on, which I can't talk too much about, the next course, the people in the art and the skill sets that they had, that they were brought here, that was inherent within them, embedded within them. Over 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade. And they were not given any credit for, but in fact, it was those skill sets that they brought to the United States that helped build the United States to where it is, such a meteoric rise
There's some
to
people
the
who
power
should
that it
hear
is now, but it was done on the backs of black people.
Yeah.
You know, so even if you don't know anything about African art or artistry or skills or craftsmanship, in fact, you know nothing about African art and their contribution technically. What hits you when you walk into this place, for example, is the sheer power of the beauty of the art and what it represents and the spirit that it has. So you don't have to know anything about African art and its history or its provenance or what went into it, even though that's very important, and we have that information. But you can clearly see this was done by very skilled people with very technically embedded, nourished and nurtured skill sets, you know, and that will overpower you just there. It happens all the time when people come here. So, and if you see that, that's enough right now. But we developed around these artifacts educational program. We put voice to the artifacts and documentation. So it tells, in summation, it tells our story. You know, which is super powerful because we were the first people of the world. And we acknowledge that, even though that's been tried, that over centuries, been constructed and designed to knock that knowledge out of our skulls. But we're here to put it back for the children so they realize, because I'm a firm believer that knowledge that I was gifted to have through a father, which many African descended youth don't have, I had, and it helped me to rise to the greatest heights of whatever I attempted to do. And from that came the funds for me to build this museum and this collection, which is one of the biggest in the United States. You know, people tell me that it is the biggest, certainly in African American hands. I'll just take them at their word. I don't make that statement. But I know it's important and it's powerful and it's large and it's significant. I know that without a doubt. Because